All right, welcome to the Young Turks. Big show ahead for you guys. It's going to be a bigly show. John Idola with me here today. Anna's going to join us in the second hour. We've got an interesting story that Nomi, one of our new reporters, was involved in New York. And so that's a really interesting breaking news story. And then lots of bad news about Donald Trump's conflict of interest today. But two things I really want to point out. One is my favorite story is about the voter fraud. Because wait till you get a load of who's actually committing the voter fraud. I'm already inside the House. Okay, the White House.
Yeah, the voter fraud is coming from inside the House.
Okay, so we'll get to that a little bit later. And then I've got very good news for you because I think that today Donald Trump has begun to sow the seeds of his own destruction. Okay, so I will explain to you which story that's in as it comes up. And then just one quick note of caution here before we get on to more good news. If you're using our website today, I know it's going to sound a little weird, but so everything's fine. Continue to do everything you normally do. Just if anybody asks you for a new password, don't do a new password, okay? So just that's a FYI on the internet anyway. But so sometimes we do ask you for a new password when we changed over systems. Unfortunately, we had to everybody had to create new passwords. That is not today. So if someone asks you, and I'll give you an update on this as we go along. But if the website seems to be asking you for a new password, don't do that. Okay? I'm just giving you a heads up, everybody. Okay, now on the good news. Okay, Justice Democrats off to a stunning start. I'm actually a little stunned by how fast it's going. So yesterday, in the first full day, 30,000 people had signed up to be part of the Justice Democrat Party.
Any of them sitting senators?
Yeah, not yet.
Might want to get on board.
Yeah, but we're working on it. So then today, in the next 24 hours, now it's 53,000. Who starts a political party and has over 50,000 people sign up to be part of that party in 2 days?
I can think of some political parties that don't have that yet.
No, but that's actually somewhat true. So I think the idea of strong progressives that won't take corporate money challenging the establishment Democrats is an idea who a lot of people have been waiting for. And we've got a lot of Bernie's team with us that are organizing it, but I've got more stats for you guys. So one of the main things we're doing is we're going to run non-politicians. And we already have a couple of folks that we found that we really, really like. And we think, like, you see, that's a guy who's going to represent his community. That's a woman who's shown real leadership, not in the political realm, but in other realms. And she would be an amazing representative for you guys.
You're talking about Jennifer Lawrence.
No.
Yes.
Or Kristen Gillibrand. No, I'm kidding. They keep asking us who we're going to primary. If you're taking corporate money, I think you've got your answer. Okay, so we asked for nominees, and that's what we're still asking for. We want to keep on asking for it. That's one of the whole points of this, is to actually replace Congress with real Americans who are beholden to only their voters and not to their donors. So yesterday, in the first full day, 450 people that were nominated. Today, 2 days, 940 people who have been nominated. So they're like, I remember a reporter, justifiably so, saying, yeah, but are you really going to get enough people to participate? I think we might have that covered. I mean, but really, can you get hundreds of people to run for Congress? We could already replace Congress twice over if all we did was take the current nominees. And then I want to give you one more encouraging stat in a second, but let's talk money. So on the website, justicedemocrats.com, we ask you to do three things. One is simple, sign up, takes 10 seconds, okay? That lets everybody know we're here and we do want strong progressives. Yes, we absolutely want that. Second thing is, if you have someone, nominate them to actually run for Congress, and we're going to help them, we're going to train them, and we're going to run them, okay? Third thing is donate so that we have the financial resource to be able to run those campaigns, because you do need money to run campaigns, even if it's to hire staffers, knock on doors, etc., right? So, look, it's not like we're like the corporate guys where, oh, I called my buddy, CEO of XYZ, and I now have $20 million, right? But first day, $100,000. Today, over $190,000. Okay. Can I see
Jeez.
225 by the end of the show today on the Young Turks? Can I see 300 by tomorrow?
Jeez. That's a lot of money.
And we're just getting started. Most people don't even know about it. Go tell your friends and family. And don't worry about the nominating and the donating, and that's wonderful. That's definitely do that. And if your friends and family want to do that, great. But just let them know that it exists and have them sign up if they're in favor of this concept. And so the other good news is that yesterday I was interviewing Shokat, and he's the executive director of Justice Democrats, and he was the director of organizing technology for Bernie Sanders' campaign, right? And we realized that if all that happens is that the people who showed up to vote for Bernie Sanders show up to vote in congressional races, we will have 56 seats immediately. Now, I know that it's not that easy, and a lot of people knew about Bernie Sanders, and you're just finding out about Justice Democrats, and you're going to have to know who your Justice Democrat candidate is, but we'll try to make that as clear as we can in your neck of the woods. But if all that happened was the people who were excited about Bernie show up to vote for progressive Democrats across the country, could you imagine? So for the first time, let us whisper of a dream. Could you imagine if we put 56 strong progressive Democrats into Congress immediately in 2018? Now, look, that's a big, big dream. But if you did that, here's what would happen in Washington. Their head would spin around, so they would... Right now, as if they're watching this, they're going, "Oh, I do declare, that's very cute. You have $190,000. Oh, no. Until you get to 20 million, we will not take you seriously at all, right?" But remember, the bottom line is the voters. You show up to vote for these guys, and we put a lot of them in Congress, you're going to change the world. JusticeDemocrats.com. Okay. I'm a little excited about that, as you can tell.
Yeah. I mean, look, honestly, so that money, that's a lot of money. 2 days?
2 days.
2 days. We could probably raise more if we talked to like the pharmaceutical companies, maybe an oil company. That's a lot of money, and we'd only have to give up our souls. Anyway.
All right, let's get started.
Okay, that's the good news, and now comes the bad news because we live under King Joffrey. Today, President Trump signed an executive order beginning the process of building a wall on the border between the U.S. and Mexico. The executive order directed the Department of Homeland Security to identify and, to the extent permitted by law, allocate all federal funds that can be used to build the wall. I'm not sure how successful they will be in finding federal funds that have been provided by Mexico, but they're going to be able to find some money and begin to lay down the foundations of that multi-thousand-mile wall. The executive order also attempts to clear away some of the other obstacles associated with building the wall. It allows federal agents to access border land for security reasons, which could make it harder to sue the Trump administration for violating environmental regulations by building on protected land. Well, I'm sure you won't have to sue them because, I mean, they're not going to build it if it'd be bad for the environment. I mean, come on.
Oh, I heard from Trump that he's going to be amazing for the environment.
Amazing for
the environment's going to be good anyway.
Yeah.
That's what I hear.
Yeah, so again, just realize that with all of the other reasons why it's ridiculous to build this wall, you also have the sort of two core, at one point, principles of the Republican Party. Stewardship of the environment out the door, and the environment is going to be set on fire. And then also, they're going to be using eminent domain like you wouldn't believe it to get this land to produce the wall, which used to be a thing that they were against. Not so much
by the
anymore.
way, if you live down in Texas or Arizona or all those border states, and you were dyed-in-the-wool conservative who was against the government, big government come and take your land, right? They're about to do that to you.
Yeah.
So enjoy.
Enjoy that. So we want to give you a little bit more details about this executive order straight from our president. And you'll see that in this video.
I just signed 2 executive orders that will save thousands of lives, millions of jobs, and billions of dollars. Here's a brief summary of what actions are contained in my executive orders. The Secretary of Homeland Security, working with myself and my staff, will begin immediate construction of a border wall. We are going to get the bad ones out, the criminals and the drug deals and gangs and gang members and cartel leaders The day is over when they can stay in our country and wreak havoc. We are going to get them out, and we're going to get them out fast. Our order also does the following: ends the policy of catch and release at the border, requires other countries to take back their criminals. They will take them back. Cracks down on sanctuary cities, empowers ICE officers to target and remove those who pose a threat to public safety, creates an Office of Homeland Security dedicated to supporting the victims of illegal immigrant crime.
So they're taking that whole angel moms thing, and they're going to have like a new agency specifically for those whose lives have been ruined by undocumented immigrants.
Okay, so the era of fear has begun,
Or
so,
progressed at the very least. We got more of it.
and so we're going to protect you, but you should be really, really afraid. Look at these poor women whose lives were ruined, yada yada, and that's around the corner. Now, does it give you any context as to the degree of the crimes that happened, and what are bigger issues in the country, what are smaller issues in the country? Of course not. But what we need you to do is be very, very afraid, because I alone can protect you, as Trump said during the RNC. And so that's begun. But look, this is to be 100% expected. Everybody knew he was going to try to build a wall. Now, whether he actually builds that wall is another matter. And I suspect that on that grounds, that he will flail around for a long time. And in a year and a half from now, that it will largely not be built. That's my guess, but I'm not saying write that down in stone. But it's the reason that one of the reasons we don't have a wall is because it's pretty hard to build. And I've seen documentaries of the people who live in the border states, Texas, Arizona, et cetera, going, no, you can't build a wall here. It's like, I would love it. I don't want the immigrants to come in. I'm conservative. But you can't build a wall here. It doesn't make any sense.
It's not just a flat desert.
Right. And so there's probably largely gaping holes in that wall, and not the big, beautiful door that he was talking about. And so if a year and a half from now it's schwang, wang, wang, and he hasn't built it, I think that's going to have a political price. But right now, as it stands, he has to do this. That's what he promised people. So nobody should be surprised by this. We hate it, but that's why I voted against him.
Yeah.
So it is what it is.
Exactly. Now let's talk a little bit more about the funding of it, though. So we've heard for 19 months now that it's going to be Mexico. So let's just hear him reiterate that.
Going to direct U.S. funds to pay for this wall? Will American taxpayers pay for the wall?
Ultimately, it'll come out of what's happening with Mexico. We're going to be starting those negotiations relatively soon, and we will be in a form reimbursed by Mexico, which I've always said.
So they'll pay us back?
Yeah, absolutely, 100%.
So the American taxpayer will pay for the wall at first?
All it is we'll be reimbursed at a later date from whatever transaction we make from Mexico.
Mexico's president said in recent days that Mexico absolutely will not pay, adding that it goes against our dignity as a country and our dignity as Mexicans. He says, quite simply, they're not paying.
David, I think he has to say that. He has to say that. But I'm just telling you, there will be a payment. It will be in a form, perhaps a complicated form.
And yes, one way or another, as the president has said before, Mexico will pay for it.
So it will be in a form. I love that David Muir tried to get him to say, but originally we'll be paying for it, right? And he just said, eventually they will pay for it.
In other words,
and
yes.
so, and I love the projection there. The Mexican president has to say that we're not going to pay for it. Well, Bozo, you have to say that we will pay for it, even though they're making clear that they're not going to.
Yeah, just quick note on that. Look, there are ways that he can claim later that Mexico paid for it. He could stop the money going into Mexico from family members and tweak the laws so that it makes it more difficult to transact with Mexico. And then he can say, well, either he can use that to negotiate with Mexico, or he could just simply say, well, that was in essence paying for it because I increased the percentage of that they had to pay in order to do this trade or that transaction. So I got to, will it actually pay for the entirety of the wall? Almost certainly not. Oh, that's almost inconceivable. But he will find an excuse to say, you see, that was the complicated form that I was talking about.
That is what is going to happen, I'm almost sure. I don't know exactly what he's going to claim is their payment, but he will do that. Now let's talk about the money, because he said in that first video we showed you, this executive order is going to save billions and billions of dollars. Well, we're going to tell you what actually is going to be saved or what he's going to lose, and it's going to give you a little bit of a look into what sort of businessman he is and why perhaps he's had so many bankruptcies in his businesses in the past. So this executive order, which is going to save billions, to build the wall, last July, research group Bernstein estimated that minus labor and land acquisition, with a wall that would be about, based on the comments by Trump, 40 feet tall, 7 feet deep, 10 inches thick, and he says 12 inches, but it's actually 10 inches, we checked. And 1,000-mile long wall between the U.S. and Mexico would cost $15 billion. Once you add in labor and land acquisition, it could reach $25 billion. Oh, also $1 billion for concrete, $330 million for cement. Oh, and also flooding and rough terrain, which exists, could also raise the price tag. So this is going to save billions by spending $20 to $30 billion.
Yeah.
It's going to be very effective. What I love about it is that we've criticized the wall as being a stupid, infantile way to try to stop people from coming into this country because tunnels exist, and we already know that they're widely used on the border. But this actually goes 7 feet deep down into the ground, which stops tunnels, except for tunnels that are deeper than 7 feet in the ground.
Except for those.
Except for those. It doesn't stop those, I mean, clearly, but it stops those.
But who can go that deep?
Yeah.
Come on.
Also, theoretically, you could go 3 feet down, and then since you're underground and nobody can see that you're burrowing through a 10-inch thick wall, you can just break through the wall there, I guess. But what could break through rock? Come on.
Okay, so look, bottom line is this is what you guys voted for as a country, right? He did win the Electoral College, and you knew he was going to build a wall, and you knew he was going to waste a lot of money doing it. So congratulations.
Yeah.
So but understand the priorities. So Bernie Sanders, for example, wanted to spend $75 billion getting free college education for all your kids so they could have equality of opportunity. They said that we don't have the money for that. But apparently we do have money. Now this is less, $25 billion, okay? So 1/3 of the kids in the country could have gotten equality of opportunity and amazing, and they could have been businessmen and built more jobs, et cetera. No, we're not gonna do that. Instead, we did find the money apparently for building a wall, and that's what we're gonna do. And again, I'm not aggrieved by this. I was aggrieved by the election because I knew it would lead to this. But of course, if Trump wins, of course he's going to try to waste a ton of money trying to build a wall.
Probably build some of it himself. Yeah, and look, you can compare the Bernie thing, and I like the Bernie thing, but with the Bernie thing, you don't get a stupid, pointless, racist wall. So you do get that with this. And by the way, you're not going to have to wait very long, apparently. Let's find out what's the timeline for the initial construction of this wall.
When does construction begin?
As soon as we can physically do it.
Within months?
I would say in months, yeah. I would say in months. Certainly planning is starting immediately.
Yeah, that's a ticket.
David Muir said months, and so he says, yeah, months. David Muir could have said decades. He could have said days. It doesn't matter. Trump just, that's a ticket.
Think about the prowess of this businessman. So he builds all his hotels and his resorts and his lavish golf courses, and he's going to make all these millions of dollars. And they say, when are we going to break ground, Mr. Trump? Oh, we're going to break ground in April of 2018, because there's a timeline when you break ground and to build something. When you're not breaking ground about to build something, you don't say, months. I think months, sure, months, yeah. That doesn't happen when you're building something. I've never built anything, but I know it doesn't happen that way.
Yeah. I'm giving him a lot more of a break here than you guys are on this, because he just got started. He's 5 days in. They haven't had a chance to figure.
But he didn't come up with the idea 5 days ago. He's been talking about this for 19 months.
You expected him to do homework and prepare before he became president? Remember, he said he would study once he became president, and then your head would spin with how much he knows.
My head is spinning every day.
You can say it's been 5 days. It could take us several months. I don't know yet, but he can't say that.
You can't.
No, you can never say I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Months. I guess months.
But that's the answer.
Yeah.
He doesn't know.
Okay, let's branch out just a little bit. The wall isn't the only thing having to do with the border that was announced by Donald Trump in his executive orders today. We've also got some changes to how we deal with undocumented immigrants that are caught coming into the country. The executive order tells ICE agents to focus on immigrants who've been convicted, charged, or have committed acts that constitute a chargeable criminal offense. Those offenses include immigration crimes like the initial entry into the country, or, for instance, driving without a license or something like that. Now, this is a slight change. Now, we have had for a long time in slightly different forms under President Obama, different categorizations of who should be focused on. And there has always, although Trump will never admit this, there has always been a focus on people who've committed crimes, violent crimes. Now he's shifting that to say people who've committed crimes like coming into the country. He's just changed the definition for what constitutes a criminal alien under his definition. And one of the reasons he needs to do this is that he's made crazy, grandiose claims during the primary and the general election that he is going to deport the 2 to 3 million criminal aliens that he believes are out there. Now, people who actually study immigration and these sorts of things say that's crazy, that they're not there in those numbers. But he can make them in those numbers if he defines criminal as whatever the hell he wants it to mean.
Yeah, so let's explain what we're all agreed on. If there's a criminal here who is undocumented, they got to go.
And that was the policy already.
That's the most obvious thing in the world. That's why every president did that. Obama certainly did that. In fact, Obama broke a record for most amount of people that were sent back home, over 2 million. Now, they weren't all criminals, so that's why a lot
And the vast, vast majority were people who were caught just after having crossed the border, in that little area right by the border.
Right. So
whereas here we're talking about a policy that is going to affect every American city and town.
So if you thought Obama hadn't done enough, that means you thought Bush hadn't done enough, and certainly Reagan hadn't done enough, because Obama did much more than them. And in terms of criminals, there's never any disagreement among Republicans or Democrats. You send them back immediately, right?
Yeah.
So like when he goes, oh, me send back criminals. Okay, congratulations, you're president. That's what you're supposed to do, right? Now, when he says, now they're all criminals, that's different.
Yeah.
Okay, now, so it's one thing to say they're undocumented and, hey, let's figure out a logical immigration policy here, and you can't just come into the country without papers, and so there has to be some consequences, and we've got to figure out a way to do reform here. And, you know, the right-wing approach to that reform is going to be different than the left-wing, and we're going to have a debate about it. It's another thing to say, no, by definition, you're all criminals. You see, I win, because I said in the first press conference I ever did that they're all criminals, and voila, I just turned all of them into criminals.
Yeah. And it also has a stipulation that if you feel that there's some sort of threat, don't worry about all that criminal stuff. You can have them be in the high priority section as well. Beyond that, it also triples the number of ICE agents who are going to be working in this sort of area, which seems odd considering we just had a federal hiring freeze throughout our entire government. We're going to triple the number of ICE agents. And by the way, there's when they are holding people in detention, and that's another thing. As well as a wall, they're also going to build massive detention centers on the border. That was announced today too, which that's a little bit scary.
Is FEMA running those?
I don't know if FEMA's going to be running those, but Alex Jones will be on the case. Don't you worry. These massive federal camps to
Can
hold
you just
people.
say there, sorry to interrupt, John, but I mean, look at this, right? We tell you that all conservatives ever do is projection. They said Obama's going to put us in FEMA camps. I don't know if you know this, Obama's not president anymore, and there were no FEMA camps.
Yeah.
That never happened. Everybody who told you that is a liar and a fraud. And now that's proven. Unless you think there are secret, invisible FEMA camps that Obama put, and invisible people he put them in. Okay,
Do you not have to live in a hobbit home?
Okay, so now, on the other hand, Trump comes in, and right away, giant detention centers.
Camps.
Look at that, camps.
Yeah.
The ones that you were afraid of under a Democratic president, that never happened. Under a Republican president, it happens immediately. Exactly. And who do you have? The guy who came up with the FEMA camps in the first place, Alex Jones, I mean, I'm sure somebody else did too, but all of a sudden cheering for those camps.
Yeah.
Yay, there's camps to imprison people like we warned you about. What? No, it's okay. You could imprison other races. That's okay. Don't call me racist though, okay? But the Latinos coming in, let's imprison all of them. Ooh, this is going to be let's make America great again.
It would be a fun segment to try to come up with things Trump could do that they would flip-flop on. Like if Trump announced awesome new black helicopters over at InfoWars, they'd be like, yeah, black helicopters.
Of course, they definitely would. If
all
Trump,
the badass black helicopters.
If Trump said, man, you know what, these homes are outrageous, they're a sign of our greed and stuff, let's just make them Hobbit homes. They're like, Hobbit homes for everybody, yes!
He's an efficient businessman, much more efficient living.
But you just have to make sure that it addresses the right people. So you know how they had the conspiracy about Obama phones. If you just said Trump phones, but they're for white people, yes, Trump phones!
On a Trump phone, every one of your tweets ends with sad. Anyway, okay, a lot more terrible executive orders to get to. Donald Trump is also expected to, in the near future, sign what is now a draft copy of an executive order that would drastically alter America's relationship with refugees, specifically Syrian refugees, but refugees of almost every other sort as well. So, going forward, Syrian refugees will be entirely banned. The number will go down to 0. So that's cool. I'm sure they'll just go back to their country, which is a hellscape, and I'm sure many of them won't be killed by Abbas. We'll see. Now, generally, refugee admissions would be halted for 120 days while a review of the screening procedures is completed. When it resumes, the program would be far smaller, with the total number of refugees, not Syrian, all refugees, being halved down to 50,000 from 110,000. Now, that 110,000 was only recently raised. Many people, international observers and experts, believe that that number was far too low and faulted President Obama for not doing enough to bring in international refugees, often escaping either political persecution or wars in their home countries. Well, we're not expanding. Now we're actually going to cut it in half at the very least.
So let me talk about the numbers for one quick second. To give you a sense of context, there are 4.8 million Syrian refugees across the world.
Yeah.
So that war has been devastating. Hundreds of thousands of people killed, over 300,000 killed. Already, that's why 4.8 million people have run. So now the conservatives say in this country, well, ISIS is like the Nazis. It's the worst and gravest threat, etc. And like we did during the Nazi era, we're saying we will not take refugees running from the Nazis.
Yeah.
So I hope you're super proud of that. Now, when they criticize Obama, they're right. You know how many we took in under Obama's watch? Only 18,000 refugees. Out of the 4.8 million, only 18,000.
Yeah.
Germany took in, what was it, close to 1 million?
Yeah. I don't know. It was in the hundreds and hundreds of thousands.
Yeah, so I don't have those exact numbers in front of me, but Germany did an amazing job. And look at that turnaround in history, right?
Yeah.
Where now Germany says, if you're running from these horrific people committing inhuman crimes, we'll be there for you.
Yeah.
And so that is heartwarming. That's fantastic. Us, we're saying, talk to the hand. No. Even Obama. I mean, it takes, for us, is we have a giant vetting system. It takes 18 to 24 months.
That's one of the reasons the number's as low as it was.
That's right, because by the time the refugees came and you vetted them 18 to 24 months, oops, Trump's in, and then he goes, okay, that's it, we're not taking any anymore.
Can you imagine going through that process for 2 years?
We are the people in the world that are saying that, leading the charge on how horrific ISIS is. And we're also leading the charge in saying, we will not help you at all if you're running from ISIS.
Yeah.
And by the way, this whole thing is based on a lie. This idea that, well, what if the terrorists sneak in through the refugees and wait 18 to 24 months? They don't have to do that at all. They could take a flight. All they got to do is get a tourist visa, right? Or they can sneak in through the Canadian border. There's a million different ways that they could come in. They're not going to wait for 18 months for you to vet them, especially if they're not going to pass the vetting process.
Yeah.
Okay? There's so many other easier ways for the terrorists to come in. The refugees come in because they actually want to live here. That's why they go through the vetting process. They want to do it legally. Remember how you always said, hey, you should do it legally. Don't come in undocumented. Well, they're trying to do it legally, and you're slapping them across the face.
Exactly. Now, a couple other things have been cut off as well. For 30 days, we don't have a graphic for this, I apologize, all immigrant and non-immigrant entry from 6 countries has been banned: Iraq, Syria, Iran, Sudan, Libya, Somalia, and Yemen. So not people who are on any kind of list or anything like that. Those countries are now cut off for 30 days. And we unfortunately, it was a 6-page draft of the executive order that I went through. I have a feeling many of the people commenting online will not have read it. I read it. I didn't understand much of it, I'll admit that to you, but I did try. There are enough clauses and stipulations having to do with different ways of weeding out refugees that if this goes into effect, from my non-expert point of view, you can ban anyone you want from any country. But there's some general guidelines that make that even simpler. So I want to read 2 little sections from the draft that I read today. And I love the hypocrisy in these. So, in order to protect Americans, we must ensure that those admitted to this country do not bear hostile attitudes towards our country and its founding principles, which certainly sounds good in practice, but it's a vague enough, I mean, it's basically thought crimes. It's saying we can look at people and try to figure out if they fit in culturally with my interpretation of what people who've been dead for hundreds of years wanted. I would also argue that many of the people in the Trump administration have very hostile attitudes towards our country's founding principles, which is some nice hypocrisy there.
And so let's talk about other problems here. So it's a lot of people helped us in Iraq when we were doing the war in Iraq. By the way, we're in a new war in Iraq, and Trump is also the guy who said he wouldn't meddle and get involved. We have ground troops. We don't say they're boots on the ground. I don't know if they're slippers on the ground. And we made fun of Obama for this, because yes, they are actually on the ground, let alone the bombing that we're doing. That's in Iraq and Syria. And we have interpreters there, so we have so many people who help us. Sorry, you're from a Muslim majority country that Trump has decided is too dangerous, so you go along with everyone else. Am I going to make evaluations based on merits? No, you're from a Muslim country. They're the 6 that have been banned. Off you go. No chance. So, all right, now maybe they'll amend that later, and maybe they'll say, okay, guys, we like. So, for example, one of the exceptions they already have is that they said if you're part of an oppressed minority, in other words, Christian, you get to go to the front of the line. If you're a Muslim, back of the line. So great, the profiling based on religion in a country that said we should not base anything on religion and wrote it into our Constitution. We should not base our government, our rules, our laws based on religion. Immediately under Trump, we have begun to do that. That is, by most accounts, unconstitutional, and it is certainly un-American. The whole point of this country is, remember how the Puritans ran from Europe because they were running away from religious persecution?
Yeah.
And here in America, you go practice any religion you want and we wouldn't discriminate against you? Well, that core idea of America is what is under attack right now. Yeah. And then finally, on this portion, so what is the list of things that they particularly watch out for? So some are super obvious. Honor killings. Oh, really? You're involved in an honor killing. Who's going to let you in the country anyway? Of course, you're a murderer. Of course we're not going to let you in the country. That's what the 18 to 24-month vetting process is for. Like you check, oh, honor killings. Yes, I have murdered several people. They're like, oh, well.
You're going to lose some points for that.
Yeah. No, that was never allowed, and of course it wouldn't be allowed now. But they also say if you commit bigotry, isn't that ironic? Especially if you persecute against people based on religion, race, gender, or sexual orientation. Wait, under that law, you wouldn't allow yourself into the country.
Yeah.
This law is the one that is discriminating based on religion and perhaps race and is doing bigotry.
Yeah.
So the first person you'd ban under this law is yourself,
whoever wrote
Donald
it.
Trump. So Donald, don't go out of the country.
Yeah.
We won't let you back in.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta love the straightforward irony of you can't persecute someone based on religion in a document whose purpose is to persecute based on religion, but then just generally, you guys run all of your races in politics based on persecution against people based on their race and gender, and especially sexual orientation. Have you been paying attention to your party over the past couple of decades? It's amazing the hypocrisy there.
By the way, Pence, don't go out of the country either. Pence
Won't get back in?
very clearly is in favor of gay conversion therapy, want to take money out of AIDS prevention and treatment programs to put it into gay conversion therapy because he thinks being gay is something that needs to be cured.
Yeah.
So that is clearly discrimination based on sexual orientation. Mike Pence, you are warned. If you leave the country, we're not going to let you back in. Could you imagine?
No, who would be third? Oh, I guess Paul Ryan. Yeah, that'd be great. Okay, we do have more executive orders, more terrible news, but we should probably take a little break. And,
Okay. Yeah, let's take a quick break. Let me go ahead and try to check on for you guys where we are on raisingforthejustdemocrats.com, and then of course the story we haven't gotten to yet that I believe where Donald Trump has sowed the seeds of his destruction.
I'm excited to find out which one it is.
Okay, when we come back. Here's how we prove we're too strong. We're up for a shorty again. Let's crush the competition. We're actually up for 2 awards. Best News and Media, of course, and Best Overall YouTube Presence. Ooh, I'll sink your lawn. PewDiePie, we're coming for you. Okay, I don't know if he's nominated. Anyway, let's go win it. It'll annoy our competition. Those guys go, oh, yeah, no, but we're bigger or something. I mean, we don't have the numbers, but we can maybe. well, how come we win the shorties, the streamies, and the webbies every year? By the way, it's not because of us, it's because of you guys. You're too strong. Let's go crush them. How you vote, you go into the description box below. You've got all the links there. We also made it tinyurl.com/TYTShorty2017. You could bother typing that in if you don't want to go to the links below and just click it. And you know what? You can vote every single day. So you can't vote more than twice a day. I don't want any voter fraud, okay? But you can vote every day. Let's go win those 2 shorties. Best overall YouTube presence, Washington. Go. Look, there is a moment. There could be a moment. There could be a moment where you go, that's it. We made it. It's over. Look, I've been dreaming of the it's over party for a decade. Like when I go, okay, we're financially stable. It doesn't mean we don't have to be rich. We don't have to be, but like, I mean, for the Young Turks, right? We docked the fucking ship. I want to dock the ship so badly.
You know, let me tell you the moment you'll know when you've docked the ship is when you guys can pay me.
Look, man, the good news is we have viewers galore. We don't have money. I don't know why that's there. So that's a long conversation. On our way out, I will now ironically give you my major announcement of the day. TYT Network just now passed 5 billion views. All right, back on the Young Turks. First of all, I just checked justicedemocrats.com, 193,000. Can I see 200 by the end of the hour? Probably not. That's too much to ask for. But can we see 200 by the end of the hour? Okay, so, by the way, for the folks who are now starting to get a little, it was fun for the fundraising, and sometimes people do get tired of it. I know we're testing your patience, but that's because Trump got elected. We got to do everything at once. We got to go, right? Mm-hmm. So as I read some of the stories that we have for you later in the program, I think, I wish we broke that story. I wish we already had the reporters in place to go get those, and I hope we break the ones that nobody else is going to break.
Well, maybe we'll send people to the new detention centers on the border.
Well, I mean,
might.
we'll certainly look at it. Jordan was down at the border just a couple of weeks ago. So yes, the one to hire more journalists is still going. So for example, the shirt that John is wearing. So if you give $127 at tytnetwork.com/go, you can get that shirt, and we still have the cameras and the chairs and all of that. I think we're out of the rings. So I'm not trying to stop you from giving $1,000. That would be awesome, right?
If you liked it, you should have put a ring on it.
Okay.
And by it, I mean you. And by us, I mean $1,000.
Okay, so but I'm not going to keep emphasizing that day in, day out. But I definitely want you guys. So we still need to get to 1.5 to hire another team, etc. But if we get to 2, we're done. We're not going to go past 2. If we get to 100 days of the Trump administration, we're done. We're not going to go past that for the journalism thing. Justice Democrats is as big as you want it to be.
Yeah.
So that's on you guys, obviously, and I want it desperately to be gigantic so we can actually win those races and make history together. So I just wanted to give you guys context on that.
And if it starts to bother you, and I understand fundraising gets annoying, just remember the stakes. We are literally trying to stop our country from becoming a fascist dictatorship.
Yeah. So there's something. Okay.
I say that half jokingly, but it's also true.
Okay. So real quick, some tweets. Perry Spletstoser. Shouldn't have bothered trying that. Perry writes in, I got a bonus coming from work in a few weeks. Was going to buy a new desk chair, but my ass can wait. Democracy can't. All right. Wow. Thank you, Perry. JustDemocrats.com. El Dawane Chingon writes in, as one who lives border adjacent, I say bring it. We'll tear that fucker down brick by brick.
That was one of my favorite signs at the march. It was this young kid who's holding a sign that says, if your generation builds a wall, my generation will tear it down. And I teared up when I saw that.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Oh, I can't wait. We're going to be so much better in the future.
And that leads perfectly into Case Smith, who has a great tweet. He said, the irony, Republicans still worship tear down this wall Reagan and now love build this wall Trump. Yeah, that's it, Case Smith. You got 3 ums. You're getting a T-shirt. Okay, not that one. That's for the campaign and only for the campaign. But shoptyt.com. You'll pick a T-shirt. We'll send it to you. Somebody will reach out to you. And then Crow, another great tweet. Donald Trump passing out executive orders like they're candy. Hope you don't get to a point where it becomes unconstitutional.
Yeah, I made that point earlier. It was everybody gave Obama shit because he passed executive orders, which were, thanks to GOP obstruction, the only way he could accomplish anything. Trump, who could get the friendly GOP Congress and the Senate and House and eventually the Supreme Court to okay anything he wants, just to show that he can, does it through executive orders. That thing distributing the money for the wall, he didn't even need an executive order for that. They could just do that. He just wants to show you that he can rule that way if he wants to.
It is amazing. I mean, on a dime they turn.
Yeah.
Executive orders are totally unconstitutional. Here's all my executive orders. Executive order. Anybody want an executive order? Okay.
Executive order up. Ding, ding. Anyway, it's a weird food joke. Okay, let's jump back into the mess that is America. Several members of Donald Trump's new ethics team have now been revealed. If you don't remember this, it came about as a result of Trump's first press conference of this year, where he announced that to avoid some of the rampant conflicts of interest that come when you are invested in literally hundreds of companies and you become president, he was going to have these sort of independent advisors and lawyers who are going to look at things, figure out which deals are okay and which aren't. Well, now we have a preview of what some of those are going to look like. Bobby Birchfield, who's a partner in the Washington office of King & Spalding, also represented George W. Bush in the 2000 Florida recount, will be an independent ethics advisor. Birchfield is currently chairman of Crossroads GPS, the secret money Republican advocacy group started by Karl Rove, and thus a man of unimpeachable moral fiber.
So let's break that down. Look, so he's a Republican lawyer. I actually don't have a problem with that. The other nominees for the post were people like Michael Mukasey, who was the Attorney General for George W. Bush as well. And of course he's going to pick a Republican, okay? So fair is fair. Now, on the other hand, this guy fought against McCain-Feingold and literally went to court to destroy any kind of check on whether politicians could get crooked money to help them win their elections. Now, that's my interpretation of it. I know that the Koch brothers and all the billionaires and multinational corporations view their bribery as a freedom of speech issue. They would just like to talk to our politicians with their millions of dollars. Anyway, this guy, of course, supported that. Institutional corruption defined. I thought we were going to drain the swamp, and he's in charge of ethics.
Yeah.
Okay, but even more important that is the specific thing that John mentioned there at the end. He was a chairman of Crossroads GPS, which is a super PAC designed to get dark money into politicians' hands. It's like one of the most corrupt things in the country.
Yeah.
Right? When those super PACs say, okay, I will take money that you don't even know where it's coming from, and then I'll funnel it up to the politicians, and those politicians will do favors for people you'll never even find out. That's what this guy was in charge of, like the most unethical thing there is. Not according to me, according to the American population. When you ask them about the super PACs, they hate the super PACs.
Yeah.
When you ask them about dark money, it is deeply unpopular. That's our new ethics guy.
Independent ethics guy.
But it gets worse. I think the
we
second
have
guy is
another.
worse.
George Sorial, a lawyer for the Trump Organization since 2007, will become chief compliance counsel. Sorial's work for Trump included his for-profit education company, Trump University, that recently paid $25 million to settle fraud accusations. Sorial threatened to sue the Better Business Bureau over its C- rating.
I thought it was D-.
I think it ended up lower. It was A+, believe me. And so he's going to become the compliance counsel.
Okay, so
Independent ethics.
this is the guy who was the lawyer that defended the biggest scam Trump ran. I mean, that's like saying, ha ha, oh, you would like someone who's going to be in charge of ethics. Oh, let me go ask my lawyer for Trump University. Okay. And, oh, you'd like for him to be independent. Let me ask my lawyer for Trump University. And just to rub it in a little more, because it wasn't enough that Mnuchin used to work for George Soros, because they love to do the opposite of what they promised.
Yeah.
The guy's name even sounds like George Soros. George Sorio.
You're not being fair. George Soros, I looked it up, he studied ethics. Unfortunately, he studied at Trump University. It's probably not worth a damn.
Did he get a C- on it?
I don't know. He gave great reviews to his teacher, though, because they were forced to.
Believe me.
Now we have a quote from Fred Wertheimer of Democracy 21, a government watchdog. It's not in the government, but it does watchdog stuff for the government, of the government, I should say. It says, I don't know what makes Birchfield qualified for that job, but in my experience, he certainly does not have a track record for promoting ethical standards and rules. From what I know of his experience in this field, he does not fit the definition of an ethics advisor.
Right.
Except that we now live in topsy-turvy world, the upside down.
Yeah. So Wertheimer is a person who lives in Washington and is part of the Washington culture. So he's nobody's radical change guy, right? He's
Doesn't chain himself to trees.
He's like nice and easy, just a little bit of change, right? And even Wertheimer's like, whoa, that's crazy. That's your lawyer for Trump University.
Yeah.
You can't call him independent, and you certainly can't say that he should be the one in charge of ethics. Well, whether he can or not, he just did it.
Now, what's interesting is we have this new ethics team coming in to try to avoid some conflicts of interest. And we're reassured that he had that big stack of papers, if you recall, at the press conference that nobody was allowed to look at, that proved that they were not going to have these conflicts of interest. Well, there was follow-up studies showed that they hadn't filed any of the lawsuit to remove him from certain companies that they said they would. Then after that news came out, they hurriedly filed those lawsuits. We've got some other news we're going to talk about, but JR found an interesting panel that the CEO of Trump Hotels was on with some interesting quotes about what they think is going to go down under the Trump administration. His first quote is talking about the Trump Hotel Organization. Says, this is Eric Danziger. There are 26 major metropolitan areas in the U.S., and we're in 5. I don't see any reason that we couldn't be in all of them eventually, which is probably true. I mean, that's a massive expansion, but he's got high hopes. But it gets worse. Now, this is back before the November 8th election. Danziger told media in Hong Kong that the company had plans for hotels in China, which you might recall Trump has attacked multiple times, including the fact that they came up with the hoax that is climate change. Danziger said that's pretty much off, drawing laughter from the audience. Danziger apparently at least understands that there is a relationship between Trump's business prospects and his actions as president. But he also said this, and this is not before, this is at the panel that just happened. talking about Trump hotels and the new Scion brand that drops the Trump name because it's going to be toxic to customers soon. Both brands and any others we create will have a domestic emphasis for the next 4 or 8 years. So why is it that they would be focusing on domestic business for 4 or maybe 8 years? Strange.
So Trump says, don't worry, man, I got it in a blind trust. My kids are running it. Again, not remotely a blind trust. Now, they just announced that they're going to go in 21 new cities. It's not like Trump didn't hear it. So I'm pretty sure he knows where his financial interests lie. If I know it, I think he knows it. So conflicts of interest and all that, gone. They don't care at all. So, and look, I keep coming back to this. If you're a Trump voter, are you happy about this? I mean, I know that you like to excuse things and be like, oh yeah, he got away with it. But wait, why are you happy that he got away with it? I thought you wanted to drain the swamp. I thought you hated crooked Hillary and because she was serving herself by giving those speeches at Goldman Sachs. And I agreed with you on that, right? Now, when Trump serves himself, why are you happy about that? Like, I don't know if you know this, he's not going to share the money with you. So I didn't like self-dealing when Clinton's did it. I don't like it when Trump does it.
Yeah.
Why would you be so maniacal? It's like, no, but when Trump does self-dealing and he's crooked, that's awesome. He tricked you guys and me. What?
Well, Jay, you know why? It's because of this.
Yeah, that's right.
That's why. They're holding their banana up to Father Trump.
Oh, that's so sad.
Baby. Monkey baby.
Beta.
Oh, my God. Okay, I've actually heard less of that. I think they've moved on to cuck. That's nice.
No, but I like that. I think I'm going to revive that for Trump followers.
Maybe.
I mean, he's an alpha to their beta.
Yeah.
I mean, they're the ones who are like, Trump, do whatever you want. Take my money. I mean, if that's not beta, I don't know what's beta, right?
I don't know. I'll go on Reddit and find out.
And they probably would let him cuck them.
Oh, and the wife would really enjoy it. Okay, let's move on to what I find to be perhaps the scariest news, especially because we already knew that the wall was coming. But this, I did not think that he would have the arrogance, the orange balls to do something like this. Donald Trump is apparently considering reopening the CIA's black sites that were the location of much of the torture that took place during the War on Terror under President Bush. Now, we knew that he had a very favorable opinion of torture, but the CIA black sites are so stereotypically, cinematically bad things that I did not think he would be willing to go this far, but we're going to show you what's in that draft executive order. It says that high-level Trump administration officials should conduct several reviews and make recommendations to Mr. Trump. One was a recommendation on this: whether to reinitiate a program of interrogation of high-value alien terrorists to be operated outside the United States by the CIA. And I mean, how could you even write that sentence? Like, okay, so you think that there's high-value aliens that should be interrogated, but to specifically say, but let's not do it in America. Let's definitely do it overseas where fewer people will be able to see it.
And less laws will apply. U.S.
And
laws,
certainly less, yeah.
U.S. laws won't apply when we torture them, do cruel and unusual punishment, and violate the Constitution.
Which is interesting and fits in with this. So Mr. Trump's order says no detainee should be tortured or otherwise subjected to cruel, inhuman, or degrading treatment as prescribed by U.S. law, but it makes no mention of international law commitments binding the United States to adhere to humane standards. And first of all, we already know what he thinks qualifies as torture, and we'll get into that. But also, that means then that the U.S. law could just be changed, and then we could do whatever we want. Let's not worry about all those international laws that have kept the world in a relatively stable place for something like 7 decades.
I mean, you mentioned this is theater, right? And Trump often says, look, I'm putting on a show. Yeah. And so if this is a show for his base, well played, his vicious base, the half of his voters who are the deplorables, the only thing Hillary Clinton got right in the whole campaign, will love it. They're like, yes, we get to torture the brown people again. Yes, 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 right? And then they'll say, whoa, what do you mean? Don't call me vicious. How dare you?
I'm a Christian.
How could you call me deplorable? I just like torturing people.
Yeah.
And by the way, torture, as we've explained 1,000 times, based on evidence, it does get you something. It doesn't get you the truth. It gets you whatever you that particular torturer wants to hear, right? And one of the things that Cheney accomplished with torture back in the day was people would falsely say that Iraq was involved with 9/11, which were all disproven later. But at the time, he wanted to invade Iraq, and the torturer gets what he wants, but he doesn't get the truth.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? So, but in terms of theater for the rest of the country, he's misjudging it. Yes, half of your voters are deplorable. That means 75% of the country isn't, including half of your voters. And a mom sitting in Kansas doesn't think like, yes, they reopened the dungeons. She's a little uncomfortable with it. And I think she's going to grow a lot more uncomfortable with it as time goes on.
I hope so, but I don't know. Like I remember back now, I wasn't in media back during the Bush administration, but I was following it mostly by watching the Young Turks in a lot of ways. But people went along with a lot of stuff because they were scared, and they had the orange light. You know, they raised that rating on the terror rating, and people were really scared. And I think if you combine the fact that Trump is already trying to scare us, and we've got a story later in the show about that, but that also he's clamping down on the release of any information. I mean, God knows, like, we were lucky enough to have people who'd leak stuff in the past. Will we in the future? I honestly don't know. But in terms of his views on torture, this quote that we're going to read for you is exactly what those deplorables want to hear. Mr. Trump vowed during the campaign to bring back waterboarding and, quote, a hell of a lot worse, not only because, quote, torture works, but because even if it doesn't work, they deserve it anyway.
Wow.
And that, I mean, look, Bush defended torture a million times, but he always said it was to get the information. Even Cheney would probably do that. But the voter out there, the deplorable, doesn't actually care about that. He just wants them to feel pain. And Trump perfectly summarized that right there.
Now, so John read to you earlier that theoretically it says we won't do cruel and inhuman treatment.
Yeah.
But Trump has told you his interpretation of what's legal is something that is cruel and inhuman, waterboarding, and a hell of a lot worse. And he doesn't care that it doesn't work. He just wants to do it for vengeance sake.
I know you might say, well, that was a long time ago. Maybe he's changed his view. Well, why don't we go to this next video and see if that's the case.
You told me during one of the debates that you would bring back waterboarding and a hell of a lot worse.
I would do what I would do. I want to keep our country safe. I want to keep our country safe.
What does that mean?
When they're shooting, when they're chopping off the heads of our people and other people, when they're chopping off the heads of people because they happen to be a Christian in the Middle East, when ISIS is doing things that nobody has ever heard of since medieval times, would I feel strongly about waterboarding? As far as I'm concerned, we have to fight fire with fire. I have spoken as recently as 24 hours ago with people at the highest level of intelligence, and I asked them the question, does it work? Does torture work? And the answer was yes, absolutely. I will rely on Pompeo and Mattis and my group. And if they don't want to do, that's fine. If they do want to do, then I will work toward that end. I want to do everything within the bounds of what you're allowed to do legally. But do I feel it works? Absolutely, I feel it works.
So really fast. I don't believe that they told him that, and we can't. That this is a terrible position to be in because it makes us seem partisan. We cannot trust. We already know that he's, in terms of the briefings that were given about the Russia stuff, he would come out and say that he'd been told one thing, and then it would be directly contradicted by people in the meeting the next day. He simply lies. Also, he didn't say they said enhanced interrogation works. He said they said torture works, and so he's for it. He can't even remember the term he believes he's allowed to use. He literally just said torture there is okay.
Torture, by the way, is illegal under American law, let alone international law. It's torture, for Christ's sake. We're having a conversation about this. Of course it's illegal. So, I mean, if you did it to dogs, you'd get a prison sentence. Ask Michael Vick, right?
Yeah.
If you did it to small animals, you'd get a prison. If you do it to humans, even if you think they're terrorists, by the way, a lot of these people are never even charged. And by the way, oops, it turns out in Guantanamo Bay, we had hundreds of people who we later decided were innocent, that they had been turned in for the $5,000 bounty and they hadn't done anything.
Yeah.
So, but they never got tried, but they got tortured anyway. Now he's saying, oh, yeah. By the way, Pompeo and Mattis, be careful the advice you give him.
Yeah.
Because he just said he's going to throw you under the bus. Later, he's going to say, well, I didn't.
They said it was allowable.
Pompeo and Mattis told me I should do it. It was their decision, not mine. I told you right on tape.
And also the sick ethics of, well, if they do something, then we get to fight fire with fire. If they're immoral, we get to be immoral. First of all, if they're chopping off the heads of Christians, they do chop off the heads of Christians, in some cases because they're Christians. They also chop off about 10 times as many heads of Muslims, specifically because they're Muslims, but not in the way that they want them to be. I love that you can't even acknowledge the fact that most of the victims by far are Muslims. But again, that if they do it, we get to do it. This is the Christian president. This is the people who, driven by this Bible, the inerring word of God, well, they were fucked up, so we get to be as fucked up as we want, which also then justifies what they're doing, because we're showing that it's apparently fine. If you think you need to do this to protect your country, we agree with you.
So finally, I think that that's the thing to emphasize. He says we haven't seen anything like this since medieval times, and we're going to do the same thing.
Yeah.
So it is so horrific that we haven't seen it since medieval, and that's why I would like to do it. I'm going to fight fire with fire.
Yeah.
So he talked about decapitating people. So if it's fire with fire, are we going to start decapitating people? Are we going to do it indiscriminately based on race or religion like they do? I mean, we're fighting fire with fire, right?
He feels strongly. Got to protect the country.
So I don't know where his line is. And even if you're a conservative, I ask you, do you know where Trump's line is? I don't even know if he's got a line.
Yeah.
Right? So I don't know what he's capable of. And that's a scary thing for your president.
Really fast again, with all these, I mean, this one was 3 pages long, this draft, so we can't fit in everything, but really fast also, he rescinded Obama's executive order requiring that the Red Cross have access to all detainees, took that away. What are you trying to hide? Second of all, the executive order to close Guantanamo Bay. I don't even know why you need to do that. Clearly, it's still running and it was never going to be closed. And the third was Obama required that interrogators abide by only what is recommended in the Army Field Manual techniques for interrogation. He rescinded that as well.
Army Field Manual, that's for wussies, right?
Yeah.
So I'm going to listen to the generals, but I'm not going to listen to their manual.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, one more?
You want to, yeah, because you want to do that one, right?
Yeah, and
I know we're over.
Okay. By the way, I forgot to tell you guys the thing that was going to lead to his decline. So can
I thought that's what you were saying, was the black sites.
No.
Oh, okay.
So, so Trump opening up all these hotels, or I'm sorry, it's not Trump, it's his business, which he can't see, opening up the 21 extra hotels across the country. Okay, that's the beginning of the end for him. Why? I mean, he's going to try to take advantage of the Trump brand now that he's president, make more money, etc. No, hear me now, quote me later. The guy cannot run a business if his life depended on it. He has gone bankrupt over and over again. You know that in the Trump Hotel in Washington, that all these people are now paying extreme amounts of money to stay in so they could please the president? He lost money on it last year. Okay, now that's a little bit early on, so maybe he's, the debt is still weighing him down, etc. But on almost every business, on the golf course in Scotland that he's so proud of, lost, I think, $34 million on it. All he does is go into bankruptcy. So this buffoon is going to start. He has 5 Trump properties in 5 major cities. He's going to start them in 26. And you think he's not going to tell the guy how to run the thing? He is, okay? And that's why it's to his great detriment. And he will have tremendous debt. And because of his ego, now that he won the presidency, he'll be like, oh, build more! Who cares about the interest rate? I know the guy, I studied him.
Yeah.
And all those hotels, he's not going to be able to pull it off. And once he leaves office, the hotels are still there. They're barely going to get built in time. And if he leaves in disgrace and his brand is in bad shape,
which is going to happen,
which is very likely to happen, all of a sudden he's going to have a mountain of debt. Oops. All right, let's see what happens. But I'm telling you now, be careful what you wish for. He thinks, oh yeah, now I get to make even more money. And he will in the short run by doing a lot of unethical self-dealing. But in the long run, that is not a business that Donald Trump can run, if history is any indication. And he's 70 years old. You don't all of a sudden wake up one day and go, well, I've been a disaster my whole life financially, but now all of a sudden I figured it out. So if that gives you any solace at all, don't worry. He's going to bankrupt himself again.
We'll see.
Okay, we'll see indeed. Okay.
Okay, we're going to go through this really fast, or do you want to cover it yourself, the fraud?
The fraud. Yes. No. I love the fraud. Go.
Okay. Despite there being absolutely zero evidence to back it up, President Trump continues to claim that millions of undocumented immigrants voted illegally, fraudulently, in last year's election. He tweeted this. If we can bring these up. It's going to be graphic 1. I will be asking for a major investigation into voter fraud, including those registered to vote in 2 states, those who are illegal, and even those registered to vote who are dead, and many for a long time. Depending on the results, we will strengthen up voting procedures, which that's the scary part, and we will return to that. Bear in mind, he mentioned people being registered in 2 states, which we will return to as well. So this is something that he has been claiming. At the same time that he's attacking everybody who's trying to delegitimize his presidency, he also says that the election was marked by millions of voters who should not have been voting. So he had the ABC interview that's going to go out later tonight. Let's check in on the section on voter fraud.
The president does believe that. He has stated that before. I think he stated his concerns of voter fraud and people voting illegally during the campaign. And he continues to maintain that belief based on studies and evidence that people have presented to him.
But exactly what evidence? Speaker Ryan today said there's no evidence. The National Association of Secretaries of State say that they don't agree with the president's assessment. What evidence do you have?
As I said, I think the president has believed that for a while based on studies and information he has.
Information
There's
he has,
the defense.
I don't have, but he has.
Exactly. And look, we're going to get a little bit of that in the next video you'll see in just a second. But again, Spicer has to go out there and he has to lie because they're saying that there's evidence, but there isn't evidence. And it's undermined by people in his own party, people on the opposite side, independent observers. Here is Donald Trump, though.
You have people that are registered who are dead, who are illegals, who are in 2 states. You have people registered in 2 states. They're registered in New York and in New Jersey. They vote twice. There are millions of votes, in my opinion. Now, I'm going to do an investigation.
You're now president of the
David,
United States. When you
well,
say
of course,
it's,
and I want the voting process to be legitimate.
but
Now,
what I'm asking,
that-
when you say, in your opinion, millions of illegal votes, that is something that is extremely fundamental to our functioning democracy, a fair and free election.
Sure.
You say you're going to launch an investigation into this.
Done.
What you have presented so far has been debunked. It's been called
hasn't.
false.
Take a look at the Pew reports.
I called the author of the Pew report last night, and he told me that they found no evidence of
Really?
voter
Then
fraud.
why did he write the report?
He said no evidence of voter
Excuse
fraud.
me. Then why did he write the report?
So I guess
According to Pew report, then he's groveling again. You know, I always talk about the reporters that grovel when they want to write something that you want to hear, but not necessarily millions of people want to hear or have to hear.
So you've
Because
launched
this
an
is-
investigation.
We're going to launch an investigation to find out, and then the next time, and I will say this, of those votes cast, none of them come to me. None of them come to me. They would all be for the other side. None of them come to me.
Reality is, everything's coming up Trumpy. Everything's the way. No, of course, no. There's millions of them. That's the only reason she won by 2.9 million votes, and none of them came to me. It's all perfect for Trumpy.
Yeah. So I want to clarify, and I'm super annoyed that neither side clarified in that interview about the Pew report. What the Pew report says is, look, you have to clean up the voter rolls every once in a while, and people get outraged when you purge the voter rolls, but that's normal. Why? People die. People move. So every once in a while, if you live in a place, pick a place, right? Kansas, go, oh, hey, Bob died, and then Sally moved, and so let's take them off the voter rolls, and you clean that up. So what Pew report says is, yeah, people have died in the country and people have moved in the country. So there's a couple of million there that need the voter rolls have to get updated. And all throughout the country, that happens all the time. So it's not like, oh my God, it just happened or there's a panic.
Yeah.
Kansas does it at one time, New Jersey does it at another time. And so this is very, very normal. Pew didn't say the dead people are voting. They didn't say that the people who moved are voting in 2 different places. So that's why when Muir asked them, they said, no, we didn't say voter fraud. But Trump as a child, he saw, it's the dead people are voting. There's dead people on the voter rolls.
Yeah.
I saw it in Pew report. Read into the second paragraph, for God's sake, right? But he doesn't do that, right? He just sees the headline. He's like, I knew it. And Pew report didn't say none of them came to Trump. None of them came to Trump. It was all for the other side.
Well, yeah, because
that's totally fictional, made up.
Because if you're a Republican and you register to vote, and then it can take 6 months, a year to possibly vote. Some percentage of the population dies then. But if you're a Republican, you are immune to death. You cannot die until you have voted, which is why none of them come to me. But anyway,
this is about to get much better.
And again, this is just voter discrepancies, not votes, okay? The truth about voter fraud is a report written by experts at the Brennan Center for Justice found voter fraud rates, actual voter fraud, was between 0.00004 and 0.0009%.
Well, that 0.0009% is doubling of the 0.0004%, John.
That's the range of confidence there. But of course, what's interesting there is that he keeps saying there's people registered in 2 places. They're registered in 2 places.
That is important. That is really problematic.
That's very problematic, and we've tracked some down. People who are registered. Now, you're probably not going to recognize these names, so let's bring it up. It's a Stephen Oh, wait, that's Steve Bannon. He's registered in Florida and New York right now.
That is the chief strategist for Donald Trump. He's sitting in the White House right now. The voter fraud is in the House. They're calling you from in the House.
The double registration is coming from inside the Oval Office. Stephen Mnuchin is in New York and California. And in fact, Tiffany Trump herself, a Trump, the most hated, but still a Trump, in Pennsylvania and New York. So he apparently doesn't believe that Stephen Bannon, Steve Mnuchin, or Tiffany Trump voted for him because none of them are coming to me.
None of them. None of them. How funny would it be if Tiffany Trump's like, well, you're right about that, Dad.
Now, again, we don't point this out because they committed any crime or anything like that. Tiffany Trump moved at some point because of school. It happens all the time. But it also is not indicative of voter fraud. And the scary thing, the reason all this matters and that this isn't just us chasing a squirrel or whatever, is that he said in that interview, we're going to strengthen up the voting laws. And what this could be, this investigation, which is going to be a sham, it's going to be a Potemkin investigation, the only product of this that they care about is cutting down wildly on voting rights. The voter suppression moves that they've already made, and we've been covering this for years on the Young Turks, might in some states have been enough to throw it. In Wisconsin, for instance, only 1% differed between Clinton and Trump. Voter turnout was down 4% from 2012, even though all other measures of electoral participation were up drastically. So voter suppression matters, and they've had to sort of cobble together arguments for why it might happen and why it might be needed at the state level, but now they're going to have a national narrative, and they could potentially cut down even more on voter rights.
So to finish John's thought here about why he's doing this in the first place, why would the guy who won the election want to go and relitigate the election? That sounds like a terrible idea, right? I mean, why not just let it go? And natural inclination is to think he's petty and he hates that he lost the popular vote. And I think there's a lot of truth to that.
Yes.
Right. But the second reason why his advisors want him to do that is so that they could use it as an excuse to create a crisis and then solve the crisis by doing voter suppression and saying, oh, we're just trying to stop the voter fraud, and that's why we decided that you need voter ID laws where you have to have a driver's license. Oh, a lot of poor people that live in the cities don't have cars and don't have driver's licenses. I guess they can't vote. Oops. Well, what can we do about that? We stopped the voter fraud.
Yeah.
So that's the real intent here.
Yeah. And this is, by the way, one of the subtle ways. I mean, we've talked about the danger of allowing certain types of people to take over a country, because then they have controls of the laws, and they can make it more difficult for actual Democratic politicians, I mean in small d or in big D, to ever get back into power. This is one of the ways that you do that, by giving them control over the voter laws.
All right, guys, we got to take a break here. A major story involving one of our reporters. When we come back, Anna's going to explain that for you guys. And John, you check out John on youtube.com/thinktank. And by the way, just random note here for those of you guys who are members already. Today in the post game, I have solved the dichotomy issue on millennials. I figured out why some people think they're entitled brats and others think that they're not at all. I solved it. Okay, so tytnetwork.com/join to become a member. And when we come back, I'll tell you if Justice Democrats are up to 200,000. Wait, I was about to do bye-bye. No, we got a whole nother hour. Come right back.
Nerds rule the world. Nerds rule the world. Nerds rule the world. Nerds rule the world. Welcome to the nerd life.
What?
Welcome to Nerd Alert, everyone. We have an exciting show for you this week.
Glad to communicate with all the nerds out there.
What's beautiful about geeks is geeks are open to everybody. That's the thing. It's like, so you got your thing, I got my thing. It's like, and if you're not, then you're a bad geek.
Why did you choose Battlestar Galactica? Because it's awesome? No kidding. The floor is not lava. Yoshi! My nightmare!
And there's one very special characteristic that many men have been interested in. Penis size. What's up, friend?
Yeah, oh, I know that curve.
And that movie is the Valentine's Day romantic classic, Deadpool. Who should we trust here? Our hearts?
Maybe.
Our heads?
Yes.
J.J. Abrams? Isn't that right? How can you improve pizza? With math, of course.
If we spilled goldfish crackers on the floor and we didn't want to clean them up, so we thought that if we stomped on them an infinite amount of times, they would mathematically cease to exist.
We are ready for a Wonder Woman movie. Oh, wait, no, let me correct myself. We were ready for a Wonder Woman movie years ago.
I love my job.
Hey, what's going on? Hey, bud, where you been all morning?
Oh, renewing my registration, dude.
A minority registration?
My car.
Cool.
Damn it, they failed us. And if you're not angry about that, Michael, and any of you out there, then you're damn wrong. Because you should be angry. Young Turks.
But it was genuine. He was mad.
Cenk Uygur, known online as one of the Young Turks, isn't afraid to throw some punches.
3, 2, 1, fade up.
I just remember thinking, what is this guy's name?
Cenk the Turk Uygur.
What kind of TV station is this? The whole point is for me to yell and scream and tell you what I think.
It was right out of like Wayne's World.
This guy on this little rinky-dink website is speaking truth to power.
We've been averaging 600,000 views a day, beating most of the cable shows in America.
We're the largest online news show in the world. We're celebrating our 1 billionth view.
Television, we're coming.
More politics ahead with Cenk Uygur.
He knew that the MSNBC opportunity was an experiment.
If Phil and host beat CNN and headline news combined, at some point, they want to give me a show.
Every single year, that comes out of our paycheck. We put it in, and you're saying we were suckers.
When you, as a host, tells someone you're interviewing to shut up, that's going to raise a red flag.
That guy needed a tall glass of shut-up juice.
If President Obama's doing the wrong thing, I'm not going to tell you that he's doing the right thing so I can, quote, support him.
He says to me, "You won't believe the meeting that I just had."
The head of MSNBC talked to me.
They want him off the air.
Cenk took an incredible risk.
We're supposed to challenge the government. That's the role of the media. The Democrats and the Republicans are here to screw you. And who on the air is saying it?
I wouldn't have done what he did.
That if I'm going to be a talk show host, I should be the biggest talk show host in the country. I don't think anyone else does it better. I don't think anyone's even close.
Before you know it, I'll be back on your TV doing a national show. I guarantee it.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Let me read some tweets for you, Anna, from the first hour.
Please do, Cenk.
Okay, yeah, I know you wanted it, so I'm giving it to you, Anna. Okay, you win, you win. Nick, otherwise known as Gaming Pegasus, writes in, Crooked Donald's going to make Crooked Hillary look like Bernie Sanders.
Oh, that's so devastating.
Yeah.
That is so devastating.
No Way writes in, this is holy war shit, referring to Trump on torture. The Christians back Donald Trump, and he sounds just like ISIS. Same thing, different name. You know, look, I was going to say, I'm not sure Trump disagrees. Of course he'll disagree if you frame it that way. But he is saying, I'm going to do the same things as them. I'm going to fight fire with fire, right?
Mm-hmm. It worked out really well under the Bush administration. And honestly, under the Obama administration, where he essentially did everything except torture.
Yeah. So, luckily, Bush defeated all the evildoers. Or perhaps now there are more of them. Okay, Sarah Mack says GOP impeached Bill Clinton for lying about a blowjob. Donald Trump lies about matters of our country. Where's the GOP now? Yeah, I thought lying was like the worst, most immoral thing you could do.
No, I'm actually livid with Democrats in Congress right now, okay?
Mm-hmm.
Because think about how weak Obama was on a lot of things, okay? But he passed a few executive orders, a few executive actions, and Republicans fought tooth and nail. Like, they would not stop talking about how wrong it was that Obama was doing all these executive actions. Look at Trump, executive action after executive action. Where are the Democrats?
Yeah.
Where are the Democrats?
Where are the Democrats? Okay, where are the Democrats, yo? Seriously, do a press conference, and like they should literally, like, you guys have an AV team, like an audio-visual team that you could actually roll tape of the Republicans going, executive orders are unconstitutional. And they'd be like, oh, today Trump did 5, yesterday he did 7. Yeah. So I guess we should impeach him 12 times over in the first couple of days, right? I mean, that's not me saying it. Look, I got Mitch McConnell on tape saying it. Like, they're just so ineffectual and factless. JusticeDemocrats.com, which, by the way, I checked. I have to run all the way upstairs to check because of the way that things are structured here. So I'm done checking. We're at 197,000. I'm sure I'll see 200 by the end of the show. And then I had a thought, and it's as usual with me, too ambitious, but wouldn't it be, it would send a great message if Justice Democrats raised $1 million in its first week. Mm-hmm. So I don't know that we can do that, and as always, I'm too aggressive, right? But that would be amazing if you guys gave us the power to fight back against the corporate Democrats in that way. Finally, Joe Oliver writes in, we all know that Trump has a great reputation when it comes to investigations. Remember when he proved Obama wasn't American? And Malcolm, as usual, Malcolm Fleshner from TYT, had a clever tweet about this the other day that I retweeted. He's like, maybe you can get your crack team from Hawaii back, who was investigating Obama's birth certificate to do the voter fraud investigation.
Yeah.
They should be freed up right about now.
By the way, I was watching this old video of Melania Trump talking to Joy Behar about the illegitimacy of President Obama's birth certificate. Mm-hmm. And honestly, like, you don't hear her talking much these days, but back then she was a firecracker when it came to that issue. She was very aggressive.
Melania Trump?
Melania Trump, I gotta find that video.
Who we later found out came into the country with visa violations and okay. So when she was doing all those photo shoots and stuff, it turns out she didn't have the right visa for it. Hey, listen, man, anyone who comes in with the wrong documents, Trump today did an executive order saying that they're criminal by definition. Mm-hmm. So, again, Donald, they're in the house. They're calling from in the house.
Yeah. Anyway, I just wanted to note that because, I think that there are instances where criticizing Melania Trump makes sense, mm-hmm. But slut-shaming her or whatever else, lowbrow things people want to use to attack her, I think are ineffective and unnecessary.
Yeah, let's get real on that. I'm just kidding around. I'm totally in favor of the pictures.
Oh, I'm sure you are, Cenk. I'm sure you are.
No, you know me. I don't care about that. Who cares?
Yeah.
All right, let's go forward.
All right. We start off with some pretty terrifying news when it comes to our First Amendment rights. A total of 6 journalists have been arrested as a result of them covering the protests that took place in Washington, D.C. on the day of Donald Trump's inauguration. Now, initially 2 journalists had been arrested, and now 4 more have been reported as arrested, and they're facing charges related to rioting. Now, let me be clear about something before I get into the details about who these journalists were. The police reports do not specify what these journalists allegedly did. So it doesn't say anything about them breaking windows or what they allegedly specifically did to take part in rioting. And in fact, the language on all of the police reports for all of these journalists is exactly the same. It's vague. It says that there was rioting, but there are no specifics about it. Now, let me move forward with some of the details regarding who they are. Now, the journalists have been charged with felonies after being arrested while covering the unrest around Donald Trump's inauguration. At least 6 media workers are facing up to 10 years in prison and a $25,000 fine if convicted. Now, to give you a sense of who these journalists are, and it's amazing because, you know, this is a really serious story pertaining to our First Amendment rights, freedom of press. You share the story and then the sheep just come flocking in, right? And it's all, oh, well, maybe they were rioting and, oh, maybe they were breaking the law. Maybe they're not even journalists. Well, here are the individuals who got arrested. Journalists Evan Engel of Vocative and Alex Rubenstein of RT America had been taken into custody by police and charged with felonies while covering the same unrest on Friday morning.
What happened? I thought the Trump administration was in favor of RT America. That's RT stands for Russia Today. There's some chance he's going to get let out right away.
We'll see what happens. Jack Keller, a producer of the web documentary series Story of America, said that he was detained for about 36 hours after being kettled by police at 12th and L Streets on Friday morning and then arrested despite telling officers that he was covering the demonstrations as a journalist. Also arrested while covering the demonstrations at 12th and L Street were Shay Horse, an independent photojournalist and activist, and Aaron Cantu, a freelance journalist and activist who has written for outlets including The Baffler, The Washington Spectator, and The New Inquiry. Now, none of the arrest reports for the 6 journalists makes any specific allegations about what any of them are supposed to have been doing wrong during these protests.
So let me give you the general thing that they were all charged with. They say that, look, there was some rioting somewhere in the cities because some windows were broken and some vehicles were damaged. That's true. You see, what we do in America is we find out the person who actually did it, and then we try them. We don't just round up everybody and go, windows were broken. I don't know. They were there. I didn't see it. I don't know who did it. I just rounded them all up. So there's 6 journalists, but there's 200 people that were arrested overall. And in the report, they say the crowd was observed enticing a riot. So that's apparently a thing now. Enticing a riot. So now, how can you entice a riot? I don't know. It's made up and it's new, so I don't know how you do it. But what could they claim? They could claim, well, they were videotaping it, and if they were videotaping it, you call it news, I call it enticing.
It's insane. No, this is crazy, okay? So I don't care what your political ideology is. I don't care if the people who got arrested were from the Blaze and they're like, I don't care if it was Tomi Lahren and she was out there videotaping this stuff. I love that I say videotape as if people tape things these days. Filming this stuff, and she got arrested under the same circumstances. I would be just as outraged. This is unacceptable because you need reporters on the ground to give accurate details of what's actually occurring. Otherwise, you only get one side of the story, and that one side comes from the authorities who probably indiscriminately arrest people because they just don't want these protests.
Well, one of the journalists said, hey, don't you want, that were defending the others, don't you want the journalists to cover this serious story about the broken windows and the vehicles that are on fire? Like, you're outraged by what happened. That's why we were rolling on it, so that we could show people what happened and how it wasn't good. See, that's what news does. It covers things that are in the news. And that was certainly news that stuff was happening by protesters. Nope, doesn't matter. You're in the general vicinity. Round them up, okay, and freedom of the press be damned. Look, this is Washington, D.C., and I don't know if this is the new Trump era, so cops across the country, police departments across the country have just decided, let's just go vaguer, et cetera. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be a new era. We can still follow the old laws.
Yeah, and let me be clear about something. This is not us sitting here saying, oh, it was directed by Trump. No, I don't think it was directed by Trump, but I do think that if you have this environment of lawlessness where you don't value people's First Amendment rights, where you ruthlessly and mercilessly attack journalists, name them, and basically direct people to harass them, well then, what kind of protection do journalists have, right? And so, do people feel emboldened to overuse their power, to step out of bounds, and use their power to do things like, you know, basically violate someone's First Amendment rights? Yeah, I feel like that's what was happening here. If they were found rioting and if they were found damaging property, you think that they wouldn't be specific in those police reports? Why is the language exactly the same in every single police report?
And as vague as enticing a riot. So look, just double down on that. That's the reason I brought up Washington, D.C. It's not like Trump ordered this. It's the Washington, D.C. authorities. And they could easily reverse course and realize it's not the right way to go. And to Anna's point about lawlessness, you claim you arrested these people because you're worried about lawlessness and you don't want rioting and damaged property. Now, at the same time, you encourage lawlessness by saying, I'm not going to bother figuring out who actually did it. And so that would be how you're supposed to act within the law. I'm just going to go a little lawless by arresting everybody in the neighborhood, even if they're journalists. I mean, facing a 10-year sentence is no joke.
$25,000 fine if convicted.
So, you know, do I think these people are going to get 10 years? I don't think so, but it's an outrage that they're facing that as we speak.
All right, well, moving on to some other journalists dealing with some questionable behavior. Protesters took to the street of New York City after Donald Trump decided to sign a mandate that resumes construction of not only the Keystone XL pipeline, but also the Dakota Access Pipeline. Now, of course, those who have been fighting for the safety of drinking water regarding, Native Americans in North Dakota were upset. So they took to the streets, they're protesting, and Nomi Konst, who's one of our reporters, was there on the scene, and she described some of the behavior by cops that worries me and should worry anyone who cares about journalism. So apparently, the event started with speeches. Everything was peaceful. The cops were great. No problems there. There was then a march from the location of the speeches to Trump Tower. Once the protesters had gotten to Trump Tower, that's when things got extremely tense with police officials. At that point, according to Nomi, the police presence increased significantly, and all of a sudden, journalists were barricaded to a very specific area. Now, understand that barricading journalists is not rare or unusual. That happens all the time. But what was rare and unusual was the fact that once they were barricaded, they were not allowed to leave. Some of the journalists were exhausted, they were tired, they were trying to get out of there. Cops were allegedly pushing them, and so they just wanted to get out of there, and they were unable to leave, and Nomi said she experienced that as well.
So just quick clarification on that. So you could put a police line somewhere and say, hey, no one can cross this police line, including journalists. But once you encircle people, including journalists, and don't allow them to leave, you can argue that's a false arrest, and that you're restricting their freedom based on what? Are they under arrest? Was there anything that was going on? Did they do anything wrong? Can you prove it? No. So you can't put them in a cage. Isn't it ridiculous that already in America we're having to explain that you can't put the press in a cage? But if you remember, during the Trump rallies, that's what they would do.
Yes.
The press would have to go into a restricted area, and if you went outside of that restricted area to even talk to Trump supporters, you'd be escorted out of the building.
Right. So that was obviously worrisome. It was something that made Nomi worry. But another thing that made her worry was the fact that at one point, she was changing the memory card in the camera, she and her field producer. And at that point, a cop that had been harassing her and apparently didn't like her started yelling, "She's not a journalist, she's not a journalist." Okay? So that should worry you because, of course, saying she's not a journalist means, oh, she's doing something unlawful, she's not actually here to cover the event, so maybe we can arrest her because I don't like her, right? So she was a little worried. She immediately put the card back into the camera, or a different card into the camera, and continued filming. Now we have a portion of what happened afterwards. Let's take a quick look.
Somebody will say, oh, freedom of speech, freedom of speech. These are foolish people.
Hey guys, this is Nomi Kans with the Young Turks. We are walking down Fifth Avenue in Midtown with a group of peaceful organizers. They told the officers just now that I was protesting when I was advising my cameraman to get some distance for a shot. Guess what? Protesting and reporting fall under the same constitutional right, officer. I are equally protected to protest and to report. They seem to think it's okay to attack reporters now.
Okay, so let me be clear about something regarding these protests. There was no violence, there was no rioting, nothing went wrong. There were speeches there given by people like Jane Fonda. They want to be as peaceful as possible. They want to protest the fact that these pipelines are going to be built and people are worried about the environment and their drinking water and sacred land. It's scary to think that, you know, the second she takes the memory card out of her camera and she stops filming, a cop can say, she's a protester, go, you know, and direct other cops to go after her. I'm glad that she was able to continue filming.
Yeah. Listen, this is New York City, so we're in a weird situation here. It's not like Trump runs New York City. Mayor de Blasio is the mayor of New York City, and he's a Democrat and a progressive and all that stuff. So, you know, I would hope that he does a better job of directing all the people that work under him to respect fundamental American rights, including freedom of the press. But it reminds me of Aziz Ansari's opening monologue on SNL when he was joking around about, like, now that Trump won, people feel like they can come out of the closet and do crazy things. Like, it's okay. He was kidding around about being a racist. He's like, no, it's not okay. Go back in the closet, right? And so it feels like, and we'll see how it develops, right?
Right.
Because maybe New York responds and does the right thing, et cetera, and adjusts. But it feels like now that Trump won, there's a certain group of people who are like, oh, now we can do whatever we want, right? So like, oh, okay, now protesters and journalists don't have rights anymore, and we can go back to pushing people around. So I don't know that that's exactly what happened. We were not in that cop's head, right?
Yeah.
But the Constitution has not changed at all. We haven't changed the sentence of it. We haven't changed the word of it. We still have freedom of the press. And no matter if it's Trump or not Trump, they should certainly recognize that and respect that.
Yeah, well, luckily, you know, advocates for the Second Amendment are so fierce about the Second Amendment because the Second Amendment protects the First Amendment. So all those people are outraged right now, and they're taking to the streets and they're protesting the behavior of what's happening in New York and D.C. They're angry and enraged that 6 journalists just got arrested for just covering inauguration protests. They're really mad about it, you know?
Oh, so mad.
I'm really, really happy that, you know, the Second Amendment has been protecting our First Amendment.
Can you imagine if Obama and the Democrats, when they were in charge, you know, attacked Breitbart reporters or... Now, again, in this case, it's not Trump, you know, it's, you know, and I want to be clear about that, but like there was an atmosphere of...
Yeah.
I mean, if they're right-wingers, let's just rough them up a little bit.
No, I would be livid because, again, I want to protect the rights of all journalists, regardless of what their political viewpoints are, regardless of what their ideology is. This is important, okay? Because what's happening right now, it could have a negative impact on people who want to go out there and report. They might be so intimidated and so scared that they won't go out there and report on these stories anymore. And it's so important to cover these stories.
Yep. Yeah, and by the way, it's not theoretical on whether we would have criticized Obama if he attacked the press. We did criticize him because he actually did attack the press by pressing more putting more whistleblowers in jail and charging them with the Espionage Act more than any other president did. So, you know, Obama was very amiable if you were part of the corporate press. But if you actually leaked stuff that was not favorable to the Obama administration, watch out. He was going to throw the book at you.
That's right.
And we were against that in that administration, and we're against it here early days in the Trump administration, or in the case of Washington, D.C. and New York, those municipalities and those cities, if they're doing the wrong thing. Yeah. All right.
All right. New reports indicate that Donald Trump has issued a gag order on certain scientific agencies of government. Now, this gag order has to do with the EPA and the type of climate news and data they wish to publish online. Now, according to Reuters, Trump ordered the EPA to remove its climate change pages. Okay, so let me read that again. According to Reuters, a very reputable news organization, Donald Trump himself, ordered the EPA to remove its climate change papers. Okay, so essentially telling the EPA to not share taxpayer-funded data and studies with the American people because it goes against his own agenda of drilling for more and more oil. Now, if you don't care about drilling for more and more oil and you think that's great, all right, interesting, but you should also keep in mind that the president should not be telling scientists what they can and cannot publish and share with the American people.
So if you weren't afraid of science or data or information, you would say publish away. So for example, I believe climate change is real. Do I believe that because God told me or I have a personal proclivity towards anything? No, I believe that because almost all of the scientists in the world say that it is, and they have the data to back it up. Now, if you were to find data that said, oh no, actually 97% of the world scientists have flipped, and now they say climate change isn't happening, I would want to see that data because I don't want to be an idiot and go and have opinions that are not backed up by data. And I want to make sure that we fight for the right laws. So, for example, if climate change wasn't happening, then there may be other reasons to be against drilling for oil, but there'd be less reasons, and so that would maybe change my opinion on that, right? If the fracking isn't causing earthquakes, well, then it's not as bad, right? If it doesn't release methane, it's not as bad. You know why we're open to facts? Because we're rational human beings.
Right.
And we think that we're on the right side of the debate. If you think you're on the wrong side of the debate, you're like, don't show anybody facts. Don't show them the facts because I know that if they see the facts, they won't agree with me.
Right. Look, when we were in grade school, we heard the cheesy phrase over and over again, and maybe some of us rolled our eyes, maybe some of us took it seriously, but knowledge is power is real, right? There's a reality to that, because once you have information, once you have facts on your side, then you fight those in power who want to take advantage of you, who want to violate your rights, who want to destroy your resources. He doesn't want that information out there. They want to dismantle education and make it only available to those who are already rich and wealthy, okay? So the masses won't get the privilege of getting educated, which, by the way, I don't think is a privilege, I think is a human right. And then at the same time, they stop scientists from publishing crucial data that empowers us to make smart choices about our future. So it's beyond scary. So
now we're clear, though. We know who's in favor of science and who's against it. So if you're a conservative and you love Donald Trump, okay, you're in the anti-science crowd, no problem. Just own up to it. You don't want science published because you're afraid of facts. And so you're part of the party of ignorance. Now, that doesn't mean you're less intelligent, although that might be the case. There might be other reasons, though. Just because you're a Republican, of course, doesn't mean you're less intelligent. You could be very intelligent and would like to just, pay lower taxes so, you keep more of your money. Or you have certain foreign policy issues, whatever it might be. I get it. But if you say, hey, I like the Republicans because of this, then you're proudly part of the party of ignorance. And even if you vote for the Republicans and you don't like that they're doing this, well, you own it, right? This is part of what you get when you vote for Republicans. They block science. They're the party that wants to keep you ignorant. That's you.
Yeah. Another thing that I think is worth mentioning is that Trump's administration has decided to freeze funds related to the EPA and any new research or projects that they wish to do in the future. If they do want to publish something, and this is according to a transition advisor who is basically looking over the EPA transition, if they do want to publish anything, it will have to be okayed by the Trump administration.
In other words, it will have to be literally politically correct. It doesn't matter if it's scientifically correct or factually correct. In order for it to be published, there is one last layer. They have to make sure it is politically correct before it gets published. So, and if it doesn't match the Trump politics on drilling, and if it shows that it actually hurts the earth, hurts our citizens, and causes grave damage, well, you might be factually correct, but you weren't politically correct. That is not the correct political position to have, so you will not be published.
Yeah. Look, I was listening to an interview on NPR today that I thought was really interesting because, look, one promise that Trump has made is that he's going to bring back jobs. And Americans will continue fighting for scraps, and they'll maybe get some manufacturing jobs back, maybe more jobs in drilling and oil and coal and things like that. And the reason why I say fighting for scraps is because a lot of these jobs are dangerous. A lot of these jobs wouldn't pay enough for them to live the lives that they want to live, right? So we're fighting for scraps. But keep in mind, if we actually focused our energy on something like renewable energy, right? If we focused our energy on wind and solar, hydropower, do you know how many jobs that would create? That would be a new industry that would actually benefit society both environmentally and jobs-wise.
In fact, in the Justice Democrats' platform, we say that we should be #1 in renewable energy. Mm-hmm. Right now, we're not winning with renewable energy.
Actually, China is beating us considerably when it comes to renewable energy.
Because their leaders are smart, and our leader right now is a dummy. And so that's why we're losing to China and Germany and all these other countries in renewable energy. We think we could be #1. Why would we cede renewable or sustainable energy to any other country? What, we don't have enough sun? Have you ever been to Vegas? Have you ever been to New Mexico? Have you ever been to so many parts of this country? We don't have enough wind. Have you ever been to Chicago? And we're not #1 in sustainable energy?
You know,
well, Justice Democrats say that we can create jobs and be #1 in that industry. And I guess Republicans say, no, we should be #8 or #12 because they don't believe in America.
I got distracted by something, but I have to mention it. You know, it's called the Windy City, but Chicago isn't actually windy.
That is totally not true.
No, it is true. Or at least it's not called the Windy City because it's windy.
Oh, okay, I see. That's a different thing.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, no, the wind comes off the lake, and it is quite windy. But I think I remember hearing that story, too.
Yeah.
About there's a different reason why it was originally named
called
the
Windy City. Yeah, I don't remember
I think
the
it might have been the politicians because they were windbags. I'm not kidding.
Yeah.
I think we might have heard that together when we were in Chicago.
Probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. That was expertly delivered.
Yes.
Okay, let's take a quick break. When we come back, we've got more news for you guys. Are we ever going to get to the dildos?
Probably not. No.
All right, let's see what happens when we come back.
Welcome to your Friday postgame. Woo! Except it's currently midday on Thursday.
Are you gonna fire me?
Sometimes I'm being a dick. Back in 2005, we almost went under, but members rescued us.
Once their only method of success is going the athletic route, it tends to be the more preferred way to treat your body.
Nothing good in the world is ever happening.
Strong army that all they want to do is fight, fight, fight.
It's totally bullshit.
Don't do drugs and don't shoot people.
TYT is all in a good mood today.
I know I'm a weirdo if I read books, but fuck people.
I have a stack of papers here. Believe it or not, this is how Cenk used to be when he did the radio show.
Wait till you see these huge things.
I'm gonna go with your tricep. Thighs, very impressive. The quads.
That's for the members. That's in the post game. Together, we're too strong.
All right, back on the Young Turks. Devin writes in, keep up the hard work, Nomiki Konst. We're watching. By the way, you guys made that happen. If it wasn't for you, Nomi wouldn't even be on this street there, and you wouldn't have gotten any of that coverage.
I like how fiery she was.
No, she's fiery.
Yeah, it was really
No,
good.
we hired her because she's fiery. There's no question.
Yeah. You guys like fiery women?
Apparently so.
Yeah.
TYTnetwork.com/go. Let's make more of that happen. Troy Ricardo Morel writes in, Trump has emboldened all the bullies. I think that's totally right. And part of why I was telling that Aziz Ansar skit or routine, because that's what he's done. Like all of a sudden, everybody's like, oh, I can do this shit that I always wanted to do that I thought was really bad.
So
it is really bad. Don't do it.
Like, yeah, I think the panic for me set in at the RNC, because I distinctly remember that right before the RNC, I was in the Never Hillary camp. I was like, I can't, out of principle, I can't vote for her, right? At the RNC, when I saw what the environment was like, and when I saw how brazen people were with harassment, with their violent language, with inciting violence, I was like, we can't have this. This is scary, right? And that was when I kind of started to change. I still wasn't very supportive of Hillary, right? But I realized that there was a lot at stake. And now we're living that. I feel like we are now in a 4-year Republican National Convention for Donald Trump.
Yep. So I know somebody who wrote about how, the Trump rallies weren't that bad. If you just went, even Jimmy Dore, who cannot stand Hillary with every fiber of his being, would go to those rallies and be like, I don't know, man, maybe I should vote for Hillary. This is some scary, scary shit, right? Okay, the Hody writes in, knowledge used to be power, now it's dangerous. But Hody, it's always been dangerous. That's why it's power. And that's why, I said this in one of the post games because I just came back from Charleston, South Carolina, and they didn't allow the slaves to learn how to read or write because knowledge is power, and they didn't want them to have power. The great Derp writes in, 5th day of Trump Sarkar, and already so much protesting. This is us when challenged. Hope they get used to it. We're here to stay. You're right. I'm not playing this enough.
Abi Kibar, Trump, Sarkar.
Abi Kibar, Trump, Sarkar. Okay. By the way, for those of you who are members, and the member shout-outs of the day today are Charles Irwin and Rita Bartholomew. I solved the millennial dichotomy, and I'm going to explain it in the post-game for the members. So how a lot of people view millennials as self-entitled and unbearable, etc., and others go, what the hell are you talking about? We're totally suffering here, etc. I solved why people view it that way. So I'm going to explain that for the members.
Okay.
TYTnetwork.com/join. Okay, what's next?
All right. After unverified reports were leaked by BuzzFeed indicating that Donald Trump allegedly hired prostitutes to urinate on a bed that the Obamas allegedly slept on, Putin made some strong statements against the report, saying that, no, that's not the case, I don't think that happened. But then he made a statement about sex workers in Russia, saying that Russian sex workers are, of course, the best in the world, which was a strange statement to make, especially in that context. Now, interestingly enough, there is a very bleak reality for sex workers in Russia that doesn't get a lot of attention. And I think Daily Beast did a good job in looking into it. And because of regressive policies in Russia related to both sex workers and the LGBT community, AIDS and HIV is running rampant. So let me give you the details on that. Now, Russia has one of the fastest growing HIV epidemics in the world, accounting for 8 out of 10 new infections in the Eastern European and Central Asia area, or parts of the world. So they shame people, there's stigma associated with it, and they don't focus on things like protection and prevention, things like comprehensive sex ed, for instance. And so the problem continues to get worse. The most effective HIV prevention strategies for people who use drugs are against the law, and comprehensive sexuality education is not offered in schools. Now, the most insane part about all of this is that Russia had a big influence on the UN and the way that the UN wants to deal with the issue of HIV, okay? So apparently last June in New York, it worked to prevent comprehensive sexuality education and reproductive health services from being included in the political declaration of the United Nations high-level meeting of ending AIDS. That's amazing.
Yeah. But, you know, it reminds me of right-wingers everywhere. I mean, first of all, like Trump, you know, can't you just see him doing what Putin did? Now, look, sex workers are bad and you shouldn't do that. But we have the best in the world. We're number one in sex workers, right? But then the second thing is turning around and actually your record is abysmal. I mean, I don't know what your qualifications are for determining that you have the best sex workers. Are they the hottest? Are they the cleanest? I don't know how Putin's measuring that, and I'm not sure I want to know, right? But in reality, his record is miserable. That's another right-wing trait. You know, you puff up your chest, but in reality, you do the exact opposite. And then to go further and say, yeah, I'd like to spread my miserable record across the world. I'd like you to do the same thing I do, and things that have been proven to be disastrous, because I don't know if you know this, but a lot of people have sex with sex workers. That's why they're sex workers. And then it's not like, oh yeah, the sex workers, they're immoral if you're a right wing or a religious person and you feel that way. And they got HIV. But then the people they had sex with also get HIV, and then their wives get HIV, and on it goes. It's a disaster.
It is a disaster.
And by the way, you should care about every human being. I know, outrageous.
Regardless of what they do for a living. And, you know, look, the best way to prevent something like this from happening is progressive policies, right? And I'm not just saying that because I'm a progressive, but okay, let's take sex workers out of it. Let's focus on a huge epidemic that we're coping with here in the United States pertaining to heroin addiction. So obviously heroin, in a lot of cases, is injected. And people who are addicted to heroin sometimes share needles. So that's one way that AIDS and HIV gets transmitted from one person to another. So what has happened in countries like Canada is they have opened up safe injection sites where doctors will administer the drug and of course offer rehabilitation to help them fight the addiction. And the whole point is not like, hey, we want people to do heroin. No, they're doing it because they understand that it's a public safety concern. And so these people, you know, are in a terrible situation. If they're sharing needles, they're going to get this disease. Then they're going to possibly spread it to other family members, other individuals. It's a public safety concern. And so progressive ideas actually work in cases like this. You need to educate people. You need to help them. You don't, you know, treat it as if it's a taboo and attach a stigma to it so more and more people get this disease and don't get the help that they need.
So right-wingers have a caricature of what progressives think. They think like, oh, you guys want everybody to do heroin. Why the hell would we want people to do heroin? It's like they think like they project, because in their mind, they want everybody to act based on their beliefs and their morals, right? So they assume we do likewise. I don't care what you do. If you want to do heroin, I think it's a terrible idea, but I'm not you, so you're the master of your own domain. I actually believe in freedom and liberty, right? But we certainly don't want people to do it.
Right.
That leads to a great number of problems, let alone the fact that I care about that person, right? Then you've got the needles, and then you've got everybody in his family, and you've got all the fallout that comes from it. But that doesn't mean that since I don't want him to do heroin, I'm going to punish him, and then I won't give him clean needles, and he'll see, ha ha. No, but that's stupid, because then that's going to hurt other people.
Right.
And I don't think giving him needles encourages him. It keeps it safe. I mean, look, I haven't had any personal experience with a heroin addict, but from everything I see, it's a little hard to get them to stop. So it's not like, oh, well, I didn't give him clean needles, so that'll show him and he'll stop tomorrow. No, likely he won't stop. He'll just use dirty needles and get everybody else sick too.
Yeah, so these are the type of regressive policies that Russia is dealing with. And I thought about Pussy Riot the other day and how outraged the world was when members of Pussy Riot protested in a Catholic church, and then they spent 2 years in prison as a result of that.
It's unbelievable, man.
I know, it's unbelievable. And I didn't think that it would get to a point where protesters here or members of the media here would face similar reactions from politicians or those in power. But I feel like it's not that far-fetched. I mean, I feel like the crazy things that we reported on happening in Russia in 2012 are now slowly but surely going to happen here.
We're only 5 days in.
I know, it's
There's
terrifying.
4 years left to go. Buckle up.
Yeah.
All right, let's do one more story.
All right, you know what? Let's do the dildo story.
Yes.
Okay. just because we need something. I mean, it's not even a light story, but we just need something non-political for a second. Researchers in Sweden looked at lead levels and other chemical levels in children's toys, and then in a separate study looked at the same chemicals in sex toys. And what they found was actually pretty shocking. There's actually more chemical material, dangerous and banned chemical material, in children's toys versus sex toys. So they found that 2% of the 44 surveyed sex toys had been imported to Sweden and contained banned chemicals to the Swedish Chemicals Agency. Okay. Okay, let me read that again, because I fucked that up in like 58 different ways. So 2% of the 44 surveyed sex toys that had been imported to Sweden contained banned chemicals, and that's according to the Swedish Chemicals Agency, which did the study. Okay, so one thing to keep in mind is there is a difference between what's banned here in the United States and what's banned in European countries. European countries tend to be a lot stricter when it comes to phthalates and parabens and things like that. Now, when it came to lead specifically, though, they found that children's toys actually contain more lead. In a separate study, the year before, the agency tested 112 children's toys in Sweden and found that 15% contained banned chemical substances, including lead. So of the 44 sex toys examined, only one plastic dildo was found to contain a banned substance, chlorinated paraffins, which is suspected of causing cancer. So in essence, sex toys are a little safer than children's toys.
Well, 2%, 15%. I know it's just two studies, but that's significantly safer. And I thought at first that they had done the study together, and I was like, what twisted mind is like, let's test the kids' toys and dildos.
Yeah.
Right? So, okay, apparently it's separate. Second of all, goddamn, lead is everywhere. I mean, this thing's been poisoning us for decades all across the world. And so it's in the kids' toys. Okay, now we'll get to why in a second. But third of all, as you read that sentence, Anna, I was thinking, man, that sucks. Now, look, it's not as big a story. It's 2%. I don't want people to panic, like that the dildos are unsafe all across Sweden or the world. In fact, they're relatively safe. But even so, if it had these paraffins in it that cause cancer, I mean, you were literally getting fucked by those dildos, right?
Yeah.
And so it's just, in all seriousness, it's discouraging because you don't know the craziest toxic stuff in whatever you're using.
I know. Look, I'm going to keep it real. We got to live, right? You got to live.
We got to live.
So, like, what are people going to do? Not diddle themselves because they're
what are
worried
they
about
gonna do?
lead or paraffins? Like, everything, I feel like everything causes cancer. Every time I microwave my lunch, I'm like, cancer, right? Every time I scratch my head, I don't know, there's probably some sort of bacteria in my fingernails. It's now getting transferred into my hair follicles, into my brain, and I'm probably gonna get a brain tumor. I don't know. I know that's not that's not a thing. I know it's not a thing. But you know what I'm saying? Like every other day, there's a new, did you know that this could possibly cause cancer? Story.
Yeah.
And it drives me nuts. Like, yeah, I know everything we're doing causes cancer. So let's just live. And one day we'll all die and it'll suck, but that's life.
Okay, I hear you. Well, earlier in the show, we were making fun of how Trump was complaining about voter fraud.
Yeah.
And it turns out that the people who were registered in 2 different states, the exact thing he was complaining about were Tiffany Trump, his daughter, right? And Steve Bannon, his chief advisor and his treasury secretary. And I was kidding around, they're in the House. The problem is in the House, right? In this case, the problem is inside you. So it's even worse because it feels like, you know what I'm saying? It's one thing like, oh, I touched the table. It's another thing is like, all right, anyway, you get it. Okay, so having said that, I'm with Anna. Don't freak out, okay? Still have fun. Yeah, every once in a while you get hit with a paraffin you didn't see coming. Now, let's talk about the most important part of the story, which is, okay, so why does it turn out that the kids' toys have more toxic stuff?
Wait, the dildo component wasn't the more important part?
No, it turns out it wasn't.
Okay.
No, okay. There are toys of a different stripe. Okay, so it's because the kids' toys are coming from less regulated countries.
Yes.
It turns out regulation makes a difference. See, if you don't regulate, they go, what's cheaper? It's not even staying here. It's not going to affect my kids, right? It's getting shipped to Sweden. It's getting shipped all across the world, and I'm going to make an extra dime. Do it with lead if it's cheaper, right? So, on the other hand, in countries where it's more regulated, and apparently, good news for everybody, dildos are in more commonly made in more regulated countries, right? And they make them safer. So, when Trump says that he's going to cut regulations by 75%, that has an effect. One of the effects is you're going to get screwed by lethal dildos. Okay, among other things. And of course, seriously, far more problematic is it is a safety issue. And if it affects something like your kids' toys, okay, well then as a parent, of course, you're going to get freaked out. Everybody's going to get freaked out. That's why we have safety regulations. Okay. I think that's fair to end on that story.
I think so too.
All right. Now, we're going to do two things I got to let you know about. Now, our website right now is undergoing maintenance. So for the members, you will get Old School and Post Game live tonight, we believe. Okay. And in the post game, I'm going to tell you why people view millennials so differently. Like we defend millennials all the time, and others crap all over them for being entitled. I figured out why.
Okay.
Okay. So that's in the post game, and then tonight, a legendary Old School. Wes Clark is back. Jimmy Dore, Dave Kohler.
Oh.
Damn. And me. That's a hell of an so 4 horsemen on Old School. Members get that as well. tytnetwork.com/join. And patience on the website. No new videos or podcasts will be posted tonight due to the maintenance. Okay? All right. Thank you, guys. Bye-bye.